Going to kick off the Sanborn Regional School District Budget Committee meeting. It is now 7:04. Let's rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And members present, Terry and Brooks both let me know ahead of time that they were going to be unable to be here, and connected them with Matt. So hopefully if they have any other questions.
I'm still willing to meet with them. So if
Okay.
they want to meet, I emailed, well, I haven't emailed Brooks, but because initially I knew Terry wouldn't be here. So I'm happy to meet with them before the next meeting.
Yep.
So
Much appreciated, Matt.
Yep.
And we don't have meeting minutes. So we have Micah, Ken, Pam, myself, Courtney, Amanda, and Dan in attendance. And we don't have printed minutes.
Printed copy, it looks fine.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to look at them?
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So minutes from September 5th were approved as written. And I'm officially on track. All right.
You made up some time.
Thank you, everyone. All right. So the budget process is up next, and we had some changes to the schedule that based on some of the activities that were happening at the school, the drafted budget schedule was adjusted slightly for the first two meetings, correct?
Yes. Yep. And those are reflected in the final budget. Yeah. So I forget the dates. The November 7th. I should just click on it.
7th at 6 p.m.
7th and 7th at 6 p.m. Yes.
13th at 6 p.m. as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that was going to be an ask to this group is because they are longer meetings. We typically start at 6 p.m. As long as we're all in agreement that the 6 p.m. works, I think we'll move forward with that. We discussed it before, but I just wanted to make sure we were all aligned.
Yep. Again, next year I'll make sure that there's nothing scheduled in the district for a Wednesday or Thursday night in October, November. So this was the event that's happening. The Harlem Wizards game was planned about a year ago, and I was actually involved with that planning on the building side. So something that was overlooked in April when it got final approval before this budget calendar came out. But again, we should just block off everything this time of the year on Wednesdays and Thursdays because of budget season. So live and learn for me. So thank you all for being flexible.
All right. Micah, how are we doing on the school board?
Great. Excuse me. We have, the team is working on preparing a budget. It'll be ready for the meeting on the 7th. The administrators have recently reviewed budget requests from the staff and actually met all day today and are actively engaged in preparing a budget that reflects our enrollments, academic and student behavioral needs. And we're definitely looking forward to the meeting on the 7th to present that and on the 13th. And in general, we continue to work on our capital improvement planning, different curricular activities for academic success, and we continue to vision for the future. And we're excited to be yet again moving into another budget season.
Thank you, Micah. And the man of the hour, Matt, here with the answers to our previous year questions.
Yeah. So being new to this role on this night, I've seen it done at other meetings with superintendents answering questions. I assume that I'll I'll read the question, provide the answer, and then if there's additional questions, those will be asked. If not, I'll just keep rolling.
So we've done it a
Uh,
couple different
what-
ways.
Yep,
1 year Matt read every single question.
yep.
I don't, the questions can be posted. The question and answers can be posted.
Yep.
I think that's, believe what we did before. And so I think you've spent a lot of time, if there were themes.
And I actually, if you've had a chance to look at the questions, I initially sorted them by budget code, so they would line up.
Yep.
And if you're looking at it now, well, first of all, the schools in column D are color coded. That's not that important. But the column H, the answers are color coded. So for instance, immediately you'll see maybe 8 lines down, there are 3 that are color coded in green. They all have the same response. So I wasn't going to read all 3. It just had to do with substitutes and why our actual substitute budget was so much higher than the adopted. And I'll just, in case of that, I'll just say it once and say, well, same answer applies to the next 2 buildings. So really, there's not 133 responses. There's probably, I don't even know, maybe 90, but I'll do whatever this group wants to do. I know they've been posted for a while versus had we had the meeting in September, you would have had maybe 24 hours to look at them. So I don't know what, I'm happy to read it all. I read them all last night because I hadn't looked at them in about 2 months, and I've been deep in our FY26 budget process. So I read through them last night, and it took about an hour, and that was just the first run through. So I'm gonna guess that without conversation, it's probably 45, 50 minutes for me to read through them, even with chunking them by, similar responses. So it's up to the group.
Courtney,
Mhm.
what's the benefit of reading them out loud? I'm not trying to be mean, like legitimately asking. So we've had this and I can read it.
Yeah.
What's the benefit? I mean, and if somebody says, so the people at home watching can see it, no, that's like posturizing. Like, I guess I just, if people have actual questions, more questions to something that of your reply, then I understand that 100%. Like you said this, but I really, don't think that's the answer or something like that. I 100% support that because that's the discussion I want to hear.
I'd rather more of a discussion anyway than me just reading.
And I 100% agree. So I guess I would rather pose it if anybody has questions about the answers that you have given, then we'll dissect the whole question answer. And then what's your question about the answer?
I'm even,
what I mean?
I'm not, and we've all blocked time for tonight. So even if we chunk it,
I
you get-
completely understand.
all
I'm
need it.
trying to see
Yep.
the point.
Yep.
Of you reading what I can read.
I
Just to
agree.
hear it in your voice. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's just my suggestion. If people have questions about the questions that they asked, I'm 100% in favor of them discussing that tonight during that time period. Because if I asked a question and you answered it and I'm satisfied with that answer, I don't need it read out loud. I don't know. It's just my opinion.
Seems logical to me.
That's all it is.
It does. The only caveat I have to that is Terry did have some questions and she wasn't here. I know she can read it. I
mean, I will actually call her. I didn't hear back from her via email, but I can reach out to Brooks and either do a phone call or even I'll meet them in person if they want to meet at the local library or come to the SAU. I'm happy to do that. I don't mind spending another hour or 2 meeting with people regarding this.
No, I completely
with that, Courtney.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, Dan, it's going to probably be more efficient anyway, rather than hearing me just read questions for 50 minutes. That's kind of a waste of 50 minutes.
Yeah.
But
so Pam, I know you had quite a few on here. Do you have any?
Since 130 of the questions were mine, I'll just say generally, I was looking at line item transfers and where actual amounts were much lower than budgeted amounts. Just to see why, because I've been looking at the budget for a long time, so it wasn't really a detail about usage so much as moving money around
Yep.
during the year. And so I just had 4 questions to ask one's a general one and then 3 smaller ones
Sure.
that I could go ahead and ask.
Absolutely.
And then I'm done. So the general question is, I noticed a lot of the actuals were smaller than the budgeted. And it said that the unexpended funds were often returned to taxpayers. So for books for English, the actual amount, for example, was 857 spent, but they budgeted $8,000. When I see that amount that was not spent and returned to taxpayers, I think of it in terms of that's someone's property tax.
Yep.
That's several $1,000s. That's how I envision that amount.
Sure.
Now, I know it gets returned eventually, but that's a lot of slack because I know we need cushions and buffers for special ed. It's really difficult to estimate the amounts that we'll need given that populations of students. we teach. But I just think we need to be really careful about how much of a cushion we build in for 2 reasons. First, it's unfair to return to taxpayers money that's depreciated over the year due to inflation. And they could have put that in an interest-bearing account themselves, one, but more importantly, we do have that contingency fund available, and it was up to 600,000 last time I heard the contingency fund amount. It's in the emergency fund. So we just have to be careful of having a placeholder amount that we just put in. I'm a teacher. When I'm asked how much do you need for we used to use videos and things for our classes. You just really don't know. And you don't want to take time to estimate detailed cost items. So you just put in a number.
Yep.
But we need to be cognizant of the fact that if it's a large surplus, it would be nice if we could just limit the amount of cushion we build in.
Surplus this year was sizable. Yeah.
So I just want to make that
So-
clear. I know it's additional.
I
work,
have
but-
I have actually, there's not one response to your question. It's a good question. And very, were you done, Pam? I didn't want to like
That's
jump
my
in.
big question.
So couple things happened. This is my 5th year in the district, and this was made note, like, there was a concern about some very expensive special ed expenditures, sending kids out of district. And earlier than my previous 5 years here, my predecessor basically said, let's freeze the budget unless you really have to spend. So in some cases, things that were, I think with regard to that $8,000 line in those English books, those teachers, because I think it was a middle school item, if I remember correctly, could do without that. And by the time the budget was unfrozen, I think the moment passed.
the time.
But there were also situations where the budget was built so far in advance and we hadn't chosen that CKLA program for K-5.
Right.
And that program basically eliminated the need for buying books. So I know at the elementary levels, some of the books that may have been budgeted were no longer needed.
So programming changes made it obsolete.
Programming changes made it obsolete. There was that. There was another point I was going to make. Maybe not regarding books, but just in terms of lines not spent. We've had a lot of turnover. I mean, I've been in districts with turnover, and especially since the pandemic. I mean, I don't know the percentage, but I want to say it might be 20% a year. And you bring in these new people, and they may have a different philosophy. Not only may they have a different philosophy, and they may not want to purchase the same items, or if they have some latitude, and let's say they don't have a math curriculum they're expected to teach, but they have a little bit of wiggle room, they may not choose to buy those books. They may go a different direction. And this is something that I need to do, and I can actually speak to both sides of it. Sometimes staff don't, our budget system, there are thousands of budget lines and codes that now I actually feel like I understand. As a building principal, I didn't understand them all. There are things that I didn't spend because I didn't know that I had. And it's just, there's so many, and all it takes is just like, I think field trips were in there. There was a question about why a certain line wasn't spent. We found that principal didn't know that line was for field trips. So they were actually asking parents for $5 per field trip when they had, I'll make up a number, $5,000 sitting in a line. They could have just paid for the field trip with that line. But that principal didn't know that that line existed. But there's so many lines. And I'm even thinking out loud, now that I know this and I've sat as a building principal communicating that, I have some thoughts on how to do that better. It's going to come down to summer planning, how I set up the budget templates, how the building leaders build their budgets. I think when if they build them and they have accurate, no, I don't want to say that codes were inaccurate because they weren't inaccurate, but if they know all their codes and they know what they're for, they're more likely to know what they have in their budget. And they're not going to miss something because that's a thing, Pam. There were things that I didn't spend as a building principal because I didn't know I had them. And I'm not even blaming my predecessor because
Overlook
there's
some.
thousands of
Yeah.
lines in this budget. It's crazy how many lines there are.
It's huge.
I mean, I'm
You never
happy to
did
know we
that when you
return
were
money to the
principal,
budget.
You'd be working on budgets all day.
No, I actually find
That's
it
what it feels like.
fascinating. It's a little scary at times, but I am enjoying it. But and I can speak to it more now because I've literally spent most of my waking hours the last 2 or 3 weeks on our default budget and our proposed budget for FY26.
Well, that was my long question, and my smaller questions are, so info access fees, music, the actual was much higher at 1,754, and the response said, this comes from surplus of high school teacher retirement. So I'm assuming by surplus, you mean in excess of the CBA's mandated minimums, because we have to spend money on retirement, allocate to retirement. So by surplus, you meant,
No, that would have been if I mentioned funds coming from surplus, that meant that that line was completely spent. And we had to find some money to transfer in. And because we had so many unfilled positions,
there
or
was a surplus.
there was because I don't know how I'm gonna make up a number. Let's say we had 15 unfilled positions last year. All those salaries, benefits are all sitting there. And if we need $500 to cover some fees, we can transfer it over.
Sure.
Um,
Okay, got you. And then my third one is,
And Pam, on my responses, I did differentiate. I didn't give, because in some cases for large, let's say there was a $20,000 compressor for Bakey's. And it came from health insurance, not workers' comp, New Hampshire retirement system, a salary line that wasn't used. I didn't put in all those long codes. I actually differentiate what codes. I told you
reason
if
why
it
you
was,
didn't do that.
Yeah,
I
but-
could've seen them if I wanted them, I'm sure.
but I just didn't say surplus codes. I actually indicated if it was retirement, if it was health insurance or whatever.
Thank you. And then the third one was other professional services, special ed. And let me see. I think this was a typo, but it says, for other profs serve special ed, the actual was higher than the budgeted. And the response says funds were transferred from surplus, FICA, life insurance, unemployment and workers' comp. So unemployment comp, isn't that something we're not supposed to transfer according to one of the policies? DBJ, so was that a typo, do you think, or?
Can you give me that line? Because I'm happy to look into it.
It's- I'm not sure, I didn't put the amounts down, I kind of
Yeah, I'd have to check. I mean,
truncated the file a little bit, but
this year I can say it wasn't
me
my
look it up.
transfer. But I'd be
See if-
happy to.
I didn't look that one up, I'm so sorry, I had. If you want to search in your Excel for unemployment compensation,
Oh, yeah,
I
I'll
bet
just do
it'll
that.
pop up somewhere.
And it's fully typed out unemployment.
Yes, I believe so. If that's what my cut and paste says right there, you can search for the little answer.
Oh, yeah, I think this is it. Okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
that was probably a typo, right?
Let
Because
me see.
DBJ says we're not supposed to transfer from unemployment compensation, so I understand it.
Why was the actual so high? I'd have to double check where that one came from. Happy to do that and report back to the
Okay.
next meeting. Let me make a note on the margin here. Yeah, let me check.
Okay, and my fourth question is really a school board question, so we'll just let it go. That's all I got.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody else have any follow-up questions? All right.
I did think of, one other thing. I mean, the volume of new staff and onboarding them it does affect the budget, because there were times where we had, as one of my all-time favorite middle school teachers here came from another building. Didn't use his dues. He didn't know he had it. The other building, they didn't have it. And I feel bad I didn't tell him about it, because he would have benefited from being part of that association. But it's like, you bring in all these new people, and unfortunately, the volume of people exceed our ability to mentor them one-on-one. Like in the past, I've been in districts in the past, even here when I got here, people had one-on-one mentors they'd meet with. And I feel like we need to hopefully get a handle on this turnover, because you're constantly retraining people, and just simple things like this, they're losing out on.
Sure.
And we're just not being efficient or cost effective.
Mike, are you good? Previous questions?
Mhm.
Ken, are you good with previous? Okay. Amanda, you good? Dan? All right. Up next would be public comment. We don't have.
There's a lot out there. I don't know if we
Wow.
have time for this.
Get in line.
All right. Committee comment up next. I'm gonna start at this side. Dan, you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm good.
Amanda?
I have nothing.
Alright. I'm looking forward to hearing everything at the next meetings, the proposed budget. So thank you, Matt, for taking the time to go through all the questions and giving thorough answers and spending or this
Yeah,
morning.
I know.
it's
I get it.
like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
This evening. So thank you. And Pam?
I guess that the superintendent's gonna talk about the enrollment numbers when we meet.
Yep.
Looks like they're down about 10.9%. So he'll discuss that.
Yeah, I don't have the percent, but with the SCA moving into our Newton campus, and then just we have even Fremont's down. The number of kids in the incoming freshman class for Fremont's the smallest we've had in years too. So it's just there's multiple factors, but he will talk about that. Yeah.
And the other comment is, I was watching the school board video and they're talking about UBDs, understanding by design units. It's some kind of new curriculum guides or something for each grade. Is that going to require more professional development,
Nope. That's all been done.
training or?
No. UBD's been around for a while. When I did my master's, which I think was maybe 2008 or 9, that was common. Because my initial master's was in curriculum and instruction. So, and I used it in my previous district, and then they're pretty much done. So there will be no additional professional development needed for that. No.
Do you send me an example of what they look like?
Yeah.
And I just want to make fun of them for a second, if I could. As a teacher, remember how we were supposed to do away with verbs like understand and know? Because of Bloom's taxonomy, we're supposed to use action verbs like can demonstrate, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This drives teachers crazy. I just want to let you know that, because we have a new jargon every 10 years, a new paradigm shift. So just wanted to say that.
The
Bring Bloom's
thing
back.
I will say about UBD, which I totally agree with, because I've seen teachers who just teach, they don't know where they're going. It
Right.
starts with the end in mind. What do you actually want your kids to know? And then you go backwards from there. That's why it's understanding, but it's like,
Oh,
it's like
okay.
backwards planning. That's a common backwards planning. So what do you want them to know when they leave? And then you figure out how you're going to get there, rather than like doing all this fluffy stuff. And it's like, then the kid takes a test and they're like, why did we learn about butterflies? You're not testing us on
Oh, okay.
insects. And then So it tries to focus the instruction too.
Well, understanding is one of the forbidden words we weren't supposed to say. Student will understand, for example. So I was just.
I'll
making-
send you an
I'm
example.
just making fun of it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Ken, do you have any comments? Micah?
Good.
Alright. Alright, so next meeting, be joint meeting, as we talked about, November 7th at 6. And the next week, the 13th, also at 6. And it'll be right here in the library.
Yep.
Alright. End time is 7:30.